Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Last week we saw the Toronto Raptors lose a very, very close series in Game 7 to the Boston Celtics, so their season is over. They've left the bubble now, and let's make a preview of their offseason. So, getting right into it, their coach is Nick Nurse. He's arguably the best coach in the game, definitely a top 5 or 6 guy, and he's obviously not going anywhere. In the draft, they have their first round pick and their second round pick. So that's the 29th and 59th picks. Some guys that I'd like to see them take with that 29th pick. Grant Riller from Charleston has a chance to be a really, really good scoring guard. Probably more of a bench guy than a starter, but they have a good success rate of developing guys that they draft in this part of the draft. Guys like DeLon Wright, Jakob Poeltl, obviously OG Anunoby. So there's a pretty good chance that whoever they draft here could end up being pretty good. I like Malachi Flynn a lot. So this could be a very, very good falling spot for him with a really good developmental team. They could make him into a really, really good point guard, I believe. Zeke Naji would be my favorite big guy in this part of the draft. I don't think that he'll end up being a 5 in the NBA. I think that he will be a 4 because he's shown, not in-game the ability to shoot it, but he's shown potential, from what I've heard, to be able to shoot the ball. And he moved his feet pretty well and played some good perimeter defense at Arizona. So there's a lot of potential for this guy to be a pretty solid stretch 4 in the NBA. And he's a really good athlete, so I like Zeke Naji a lot. Desmond Bane and Tyrell Terry are two really good shooters, and I think that having one really key skill can help you translate to the NBA so much better, and those two definitely have it in their shooting. So that is pretty a couple guys that I think they could go with the 29th pick. Obviously, they'll probably take whoever the best available guy is, and it might not be one of the 5 I just mentioned, but whoever it is, this team's done a good job drafting and a good job developing their draft picks in recent years, so I'm sure that they'll make the right choice. And then with the 59th pick, who knows what they're going to go with here. Some guys I like that could be available here. I think that Udoka Azubuike, who was a really good player for Kansas during his career there, could be a good guy to go with here. The free throw shooting is the main question with him, but he's got potential to be a really, really good finisher inside, a good rim runner, and a good defender and rebounder. So that could be a guy I like. Otherwise, Trent Forrest from Florida State has a chance to be a really good player, I think. The kind of guy that you'd want to draft in the second round. As well as Mamadou Diakite from Virginia is another guy that I think is being a little underlooked and has a chance to be a pretty good player. Otherwise, right here could be a spot where they go with Marcus Howard or Miles Powell, one of those potential really, really good scoring guards that don't necessarily have a whole lot of interest from teams in the draft. In terms of trades, they want to have that 2021 cap space by all sources. So the only trade for an all-star level player I could see them making is Victor Oladipo. And to get Victor, they'd probably have to give up something like Norman Powell, the 29th pick, and a future first. I don't know, would that get it done? That would maybe get it done, so I think I would do that trade if I were both teams. Norman Powell's a good young player for Indiana. 2 first-round picks is a good return, and the Raptors add another win-now player to their core while keeping this all alive. Otherwise, signing trade of Fred VanVleet for Victor Oladipo straight up could be interesting. And once again, something that I definitely think the Raptors would consider doing. Obviously, people are going to say that a Giannis trade is possible, but there's no way. Bucks are not trading Giannis, and if they did, the Raptors would probably have to give up OG Anunoby. I mean, I'm not even going to talk about it because I don't think that a Giannis trade is happening. Outgoing free agents, they have Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, Fred VanVleet, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, and Chris Boucher. So I'm going to talk about each of these guys and their potential free agency a little bit. Serge Ibaka is a guy that I think they should prioritize bringing back because I don't think that he will need to be paid too handsomely. He's only 30, and he's one of the best scoring big guys in the entire NBA. So having a guy like him on your roster can be very advantageous, and we've seen that in the past 2 years in the playoffs. And with Marc Gasol's sudden regression, I think that Ibaka is definitely the guy they should prioritize in their center rotation bringing back. Like I just said, Gasol has slowed down this season. He didn't have a great year, so unless he wants to come back on a very, very insignificant, small deal, then I think that they should let him walk. I think that Chris Boucher, honestly, by next season will probably, well, maybe not probably, but possibly be a better player than Gasol, and if nothing else, a pretty similar level player. And he's also younger. He's not super young. I think he's 27, but there's still some room for him to grow, and at least he's not going to be regressing, whereas with Gasol, I think that the regression is really coming, so I think they should be very careful with the kind of money they give Gasol, and they should prioritize bringing back Ibaka and Boucher to be their big guys over bringing back Gasol. Fred VanVleet is probably the most interesting one. I don't think that he's going to be on the Raptors next season. I think that there are 3 directions I could see him going in. Number 1, and probably the most likely, is the Knicks, Pistons, Hawks, Hornets. One of those teams says, wow, that guy hit some huge shots in the playoffs the last 2 years. He's a winner. He plays hard. I'd love to have that guy on my team. Let's give him a 4-year, $80 million contract. The Raptors going to pay him 4 years, $80 million? If not, I think he'll probably end up leaving. And I want him to leave because I think that he'd be a great signing for the Knicks or Pistons. He would be able to bring some winning culture to those teams, bring some success to that point guard spot. Obviously, the Pistons have Derrick Rose, but I don't doubt that Fred and D Rose can play alongside each other. D Rose honestly played a lot of the 2 this season to start with, so both of those are possible teams for him to sign with cap space. Otherwise, the signing trade is possible to a team that doesn't have cap space but is very interested, something like the Jimmy Butler or Malcolm Brogdon signing trade from last year. Some teams that would be interested in that are Indiana, honestly every team, because Fred VanVleet's a really good player, and who wouldn't want a guy of this level? Who is a winner, plays hard. I think that he's going to have a lot of interest in free agency this offseason, especially with the slow free agency that it is. He's probably, you could make a case that he's the second best free agent after Anthony Davis this offseason, so there will be a lot of interest in him from teams that have cap space and teams that don't. So I'd be pretty surprised to see him back on the Raptors roster, especially with the emphasis they have on that free agency class of 2021. And I just don't think that they're going to be willing to overpay Fred VanVleet. So the best case scenario for them is probably the signing trade because they'll get something in return. However, it's perfectly possible that they're just going to re-sign him, give him his money, and run it back next season. So, in terms of their targets, I think that the most important ones are just bringing back those outgoing guys. I'm sure that they'll find some undrafted free agent who they fall in love with and ends up being a quality rotation player for them because they do that every year. They did it twice this year with Terrence Davis and Matt Thomas, so it would be unsurprising to see them unearth another gem, and also they also will probably sign some role players, guys like Rondae Hollis-Jefferson and Stanley Johnson that they signed last season, ended up working out all right for them. Obviously, neither of those two played in the playoffs all that much, but they'll be guys that they re-sign for roster spots and end up playing well just because this team is a really great organization and they have a great coach who's going to put his guys in good position and is willing to call out his guys, as we saw Nick Nurse do with Rondae and Stanley earlier this season. So the potential 2020-2021 rotation for this team would be Kyle Lowry at the point guard, Norman Powell at the shooting guard, OG Anunoby at the small forward, Siakam at the power forward, Ibaka at the center. Obviously, those are two different starters than they had this year with Gasol and Van Vliet leaving, but I just don't think that those are two guys, in Gasol's case, that they should re-sign, and in Van Vliet's case, that they're going to be able to re-sign. I just think that, like I said, Van Vliet's going to get too much money from elsewhere, and Gasol is just not good enough player unless they get him on a real bargain. Because some team out there is going to pay him $10 to $12 million annually, I'm sure, and I don't think he's worth it on that contract. Or I don't think he's worth that contract, I should say. And honestly, they have pretty good replacements for those two in Ibaka stepping into Gasol's spot, and they have Chris Boucher as their backup big guy then. I mean, that's not a huge decrease in production at all. Obviously, you lose a little bit on the defensive end of the floor with Ibaka over Gasol, but it's still a very, very similar ability at the center position. And Boucher has shown that he can also be a very good center. And with Norman Powell stepping into Fred VanVleet's role, obviously, once again, that is a slight decrease, but emphasis on slight. Norman Powell is a really good player as well. We saw him break out this season, and I would not be surprised to see him take another step forward into being a really quality number 3 option on offense and a pretty solid defender. Obviously, he is a dangerous player in the fast break, as we saw in this series, other than the time when Marcus Smart had that very impressive chase down block on him, which I forgot to talk about in my game where I kind of analyzed that Celtics-Raptors Game 7, which I'm kind of disappointed about. But, yeah, Norman Powell's a really good transition player, and I think that he's ready to make that step forward into being a starter next year, especially if Van Vliet walks. And stepping into his role off the bench, Terrence Davis and Matt Thomas were really, really good this year as undrafted rookies. They're both going to improve. Matt Thomas is a lethal sharpshooter, and we saw him get some playoff minutes this year. So he's going to be ready for that to step into a bigger role next year, I believe. I also have talked about this before, but a thing that I really like with him is his ability to attack closeouts by doing a pass or a shot fake and then taking 2 or 3 dribbles in and knocking in that bank shot from the mid-range. It's a really nice shot for him to play off of his main skill as a three-point shooter. And then in the ninth, they'll also have Terrence Davis coming off the bench, who I really like his game as a good guard. He played well for them in the Nets series, kind of fell out of the rotation in the Celtics series, but now he's got a year under his belt. He's going to be an all-rookie player. He's really good. And I think that he'll be ready to step into Norman Powell's role off the bench as that 6th man. All of this is assuming that Fred is gone, but if he's not, I mean, this team is just going to continue to get better and better because Norman Powell, OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam, Terrence Davis, Matt Thomas, Chris Boucher, all these guys are like 27 and under. So for how experienced this team is with making runs in the playoffs the past 2 years, they also are fairly young and have lots of room for improvement. So I think that this Raptors team is going to be very good again next season. Siakam needs to take a step forward into being a bona fide All-NBA top 15 level guy. He didn't show that in the playoffs this year, so the ball handling needs to take a step forward. His shooting could be better. He needs some more post moves other than just that spin. He needs to work on his left hand, but if he's able to step forward into a superstar, watch out. This team is definitely a contender next season, and even if they lose Fred VanVleet in free agency, which I have said many times I think they will, this team's still going to be very good, and they're one of the more interesting teams to me this offseason because there's a lot of decisions they have to make, and I am just excited to see what they end up doing. Let me know what you think they should do in the comments section below. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it for me, and I will see you all again very soon.